welcome to The Climb.
Thank
Arri,
you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. Please give yourself a quick introduction so people know
Of course.
who is
Hi.
Arri.
Hi. I am Ari. I am a person of many talents as of right now. Many enterprising talents, I call it. But I'm starting to get into things like music and voice acting and live streaming and other the facets. Just overall writer and creator. Just trying to push my content for as long as I can put it out there.
Yeah,
And stuff like that. Yeah,
that's great. That's one of the things that I really caught my attention about you is the storytelling aspect of your life.
Yes. So I remember storytelling has been an important part of my life for as long as I can remember. And I try to like think back to like what makes me the way that I am, like trying to find like the little tether. And I think I got really lucky so when I was growing up, I got exposed to a lot of different like kinds of people. So, for the first like 4 years, like living in like places like Ethiopia, and then I was over in Europe and everything. So like when I was like really young and I was always like moving around all the time, I got exposed to like a lot of different kinds of people. And I think having those infinite perspectives made me wonder, but like, oh, well, I wonder what this person looks like. And I wonder what that person looks like. And I think just sitting and imagining all day, just like being in my head about stuff all day, was like, well, I got to write this stuff down. So then, and that came from like, okay, now I'm old enough to understand movies and understand TV shows. Not just like, I think when you're watching a show as a kid, like things just happen on the screen and you're like, this is nice, but like getting to an age where like I can actually understand like, okay, like here's what the story is actually saying. Here's what they're trying to, and having the first time being like moved by a story, like reading something that was like profound in a way of like, no, like I relate to this. And this, like, I'm remembering what that did for me as a kid of like, these are more than just words on a page or like more than just like colors on a screen. Like stories are like super important to the way that like we understand life. And so like, I think that like, I got a really good grasp of that when I was a kid, and now it's just like all that I do, pretty much.
Yeah. No, I get it. I do not have that. I do not have my creative bone, or like where I find like inspiration and creativity is fixing business problems. Like
you know what? That there's something deeply important about that, because without you, I don't get to do all the fun stuff. I have a mantra. I was like, I will never bad talk anyone who's in a practical line of business, because without you, I don't get to do my pretend job fancy thing. You know what I mean? It's important, but I think that, and I do want to like focus on that a little bit, because I think that people have this weird thing about like a hierarchy of creativity, right? And it's the idea that there are some creative pursuits that are more important or more worthwhile than others. And I think I don't know, I can't speak to like the history of like how it started, how everything went down, but I just know that like when you talk about like creativity, like the act of like making something from nothing or bringing an idea and crafting it into something else, right? I think people hold certain arts on a pedestal. And I think that goes back to like, and like all the time where it's like, if you made a certain kind of music or you made a certain kind of art, that art was way more important than other forms of art. Even though I think that the art, the act of creating any sort of art, or even the act of being creative, is the most important thing to a person's soul. Like that is being creative in your own way to your own problem, whether that be through stories or through business or like however you want to express. Because it is expressing yourself in the truest form. Because I think creativity allows you to be honest in a way that like words kind of can't. And I think that like there is this weird like there is a weird like stigma around certain types of creativity that are like, oh, like if you don't like, oh, like if you don't create like a song in this way, or if you don't manage something in this way, like it's like doomed to fail or like whatever. But I think we live in an age where like I think you have access to so many resources that like I don't think it matters anymore. You know what I mean? Like, but I think all in all, to say what you do is important.
I got you. I appreciate that.
Truly.
I think that what you said is a really valid part. For me, some of the like big points that I think of with that is like when it comes to like classical music.
Right.
Like back in the 1700s, 1800s, like when you think of like Beethoven, Bach, like that was the mainstream form of music.
Yeah.
And so if you studied music that wasn't in line with that, then you wouldn't like it. And obviously a lot of it is after they died. Because like Beethoven, for example, they did not like his music when that man was
Yeah, they never do. They never do.
But yeah, like I certainly think like you know, during like the Roman period where art was certainly highly valued, but they would mainly look at like sculptures versus paintings.
Right.
So yeah, no, I totally get that. I think like one example right now is like stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
That's like the blue collar, like where people are just like kind of people view it as like a lower pedestal, but it's tough.
And it's
almost
hard.
like sales.
It's really hard because I think, and I was having the conversation with a friend of mine recently, and we were talking. I'm of the opinion that like comedy, I think comedy's super undervalued as an art form, only because I think that there's a difficulty that comes in comedy because I think it's like, one, comedy is a form of storytelling, and all storytelling is important to me. Two, but I think it's like there's a level of like marketing yourself as like that is like scary, and I think that people look down at comedy because I think that like people don't think that comedy is challenging. So if you look at like an actor who's reading a script versus like a stand-up comedian, the actor might feel that their work is like more important or something because it's more challenging. So like to play something like playing like Macbeth in like a play versus like getting on there and telling a joke, people look at comedians differently because it's like in order to play a more tragic role, you have to engage in a deeper part of yourself that you just don't. If your life is going well, you don't have access to all the time, right? But I think that I think that comedy is just as important as any other field of acting or any other field of performance, right? I think that like it is not easy to go up there and be funny. Comedians say it all the time, and it's like there is some aspect of like I'm never one to tell anybody that they can't reach whatever goal they're going to reach or have. But in comedy, especially stand up, it definitely feels like a lot of you either have it or you don't, right? Where it's like when you go up there and it's like, do you have good cadence? Do you have like, or do people understand the joke, right? Do you have good delivery? Do you have good rhythm? Are you in an environment where your jokes make sense? Are you in an environment where you're like, people are like, you know what? I like this guy. There's a level of like consent that a comedian goes up on stage and the audience and the comedian have to make an unsaid and a silent agreement. Hey, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to give you material and you're going to laugh and accept what I have to say. And the comedian's job is to walk that tight line between like, because that's the difference between like, oh my God, I might just let me go look at this guy's Instagram. Like, does he have any work in? Man, I really wish this guy would get the fuck off the stage.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a fine line, and that's horrifying because when you're an actor, you already have the consent pre-signed, right? When you go see a movie, right? I guess like when you go to see a movie, there are many factors that go into what make the movie good. Yeah. Was the music good? What was the lighting? What about the editing? What about the script writing? Like, so it's like, even if an actor is not at their best, there are still other aspects that can save that production. If you're a shitty stand-up comic, you're just not funny. And no one's going to watch a guy who's just not funny, you know? So it's like, I think people don't understand the complexity that comes with being a comedian. It's not an easy job. That's why I don't do stand-up. That's why, and I probably, because I think that like when you do stand up and everything, there are so many factors that just like difficult to control. And I think that part of stand up scares me, right? Because it's like, I can think on my feet pretty well. And I think like improv is my preferred method of doing anything, but there's something very scary about like the push and the pull that like, okay, like let me throw out this joke with the crowd. Let me invite them in. Let me see what and then like playing off their reactions and everything. That's like, that's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not convinced I have that skill. So
yeah, no, I definitely get that. Yeah. Stand up is very tough. I started writing like some jokes here and there, just kind of brainstorming, but definitely nothing ready to hit any 5 minute, you know.
We're not getting any Netflix specials.
Exactly, exactly. So what is your preferred form of like media right now? Like as far as your creation?
So, everything that I'm creating right now is coming in the form of like tabletop games. So stuff like D&D, Vampire the Masquerade, like everything that, and that was sort of the catalyst for a lot of everything that I wanted to do. Because I think when you're writing a story or when you're making something, it's like very easy to be like, oh, this is gonna be so good, and I'm doing great and everything, right? And it's like, but when I'm doing tabletop games, like when I'm writing characters or I'm writing events or stories or places or whatever, I'm going to know immediately whether this is something that's good or not because I'm marketing it to like a group of my friends. Mm-hmm. And like, I think obviously they have like an incentive to be nice to me because like, we're friends and everything. We're just here to have fun and everything. But it's like that to me, like being younger, that was like my first taste of like having an audience. Having like making something and then pushing and like showing people like, hey, this is what I made, like come in and like interact with it. And I'm so in love with it. And it's like it's like my number one, I'd say like my main way of like communicating any sort of story, anything, just because there's like the collaboration that comes with it. And it's like, I lay down the foundations of a story and then I get some people to come help me tell it. And then we're all like bouncing back and forth and having that push and that pull is like super duper cool. So that's like the main way that I'm engaging in story right now.
And then when you do it, do you prefer creating your own world entirely, or do you? Like that's your move?
So D&D has, in my opinion, it has a lot of wonderful things, and there are a lot of wonderful. But D&D to me has always been a resource, and I think that's. They don't say it on the box, but in my heart of hearts, that's how they interpret it's being played. So, and I think that way because so Dungeons and Dragons will have a source book, right? So they'll be like, hey, we've created a new realm and a new place. And here's some of the people and the monsters, the magic that exists in this place. And then here, we'll even give you an adventure. And a good amount of the adventure is, hey, you can either do this or do your own thing. It's up to you. And they leave it very open-ended because I think they give you the resources in order to tell stories. And what I love doing is I love just taking the resources and like stripping them away from whatever original setting that they were in and being like, all right, like, so now I have a place and I go to like, say like I have like this resource here. I was like, okay, well, I now have this like 3-headed demon monster. Why is it here? And then I need to make a reason to why it's here. And okay, here's how the demon got here. Here's what it wants. Here's how it talks. Here's how it moves. Here's what it eats. Here's what it fantasizes about, everything. And then you build the world off of that. Basically taking resources, putting them in a place and like, all right, now how do I make this make sense? And then you get to a point where it's like, okay, now you're working with like, okay, what's the logic of the world? Like why can magic do what it do? Why are vampires real? Why are, and there's something that's so like refreshing about that process that like that's usually, and that's kind of become like the building blocks to how I do everything. Like even stories that are set in the real world, like with real characters with real problems. It's like, okay, I'm going to take a topic. I'm going to take a person, put them here. What is their purpose? What makes them tick? Why are they getting out of bed in the morning? What's this guy's deal? And then sort of building off of that in a way that's like super, super duper fun for me.
Gotcha.
For sure.
That's sweet. Yeah, I have very little experience with D&D. I did session 0 one time and then never did anything after that.
And that's usually how it goes.
So if you wanted to, first off, do you think that D&D is a good way to kind of get the creative juices flowing if you wanted to, let's say, make your own game or develop your own story book, whatever? Like, do you think D&D is just a nice place to start getting some of that creativity?
Yeah, well, you know what? I think D&D is a really good place to start. And I know there are some like books and media that have been spawned from like D&D campaigns. There's a really popular show. It's called Vox Machina, right? That it is essentially what is like an animated retelling of the group of voice actors in their D&D game. And I think that like as a writer, it is a wonderful way to start because like I said before, it's the immediate like feedback of like, let me throw this out and then I get a response to it. If it's like funny or is it scary and interesting, then I'm going to know immediately. And if not, then I know what I need to work on next. Right. But I think it gets people used to having an audience. And I think it gets you really comfortable with the idea of like, let me try some new stuff. There are some like, because I think that like when you like, especially like the fantasy genre, I think like the railroads for the fantasy genre got laid a while ago. Like when Lord of the Rings did its thing, everyone was like, okay, and every fantasy world kind of looks like that, you know? And it was such like a profound thing that I think that like D&D offers. I think it offers both. If you need to understand the groundwork of what a fantasy setting is like, D&D is perfect for that. And when people make fantasy settings, D&D is often the backdrop of that. And I'm pretty sure like things like Lord of the Rings and like Game of Thrones and everything, that those are so D&D either inspired or like there's such like a cohesive feeling to the genre of fantasy that comes out of D&D that's like super important. So if that's like your area of expertise, or like if that's what you want to write, if that's the story you want to tell, that's the place you want your creative process to be at, D&D is perfect. Because that's where a lot of people, that's really, when people think about fantasy, they think about D&D and the D&D world and the D&D rules and everything. But also, if you want to do a sci-fi thing, if you want to do a noir like cop thriller, you know, whatever story you want to write, D&D has been able to foster a community that is like unlike no other, and the way that like the creative process of like D&D could be anything. You know, we're doing right now, my friends and I, we're doing a D&D campaign set in Candyland. Oh, wow. Where all of my players are different rulers of like the different candy kingdoms, and it's like you have like the lords of licorice and everything, and it's like D&D can be whatever you want it to be. Yeah. And all it takes is like a little bit of effort and like understanding like what's going on, just like a little bit. But like for anyone who's like new, or for anyone who's like interested in D&D, like it is such a good, not only is it just a good fun time, but it's a great resource as like a writer to like get the building blocks you need to like, how do I organize a story? How do I make a character arc? How do I break things into chapters? And it helps with like the mechanics of writing. Cause like you can have really great ideas and really great characters, but then a story is about like pacing and timing. How do you set up a sequence of events? How do you call back to the sequence of events that you set up in a way that keeps your readers engaged? How do you keep your readers interested in the world beyond the character's eyes? And it's like D&D helps you get the basis of how to do all of that. And it's like been a really helpful tool for me.
What are some other forms of media that you've utilized some of the ideas and tools that D&D gives you to kind of play around with other thoughts?
So the other thing that inspires that of like, how do I, like other tool that I'm using a lot of is music. And I think that like, obviously when you're making like a movie or like a video production, then like music is a big part of that. But I don't think people understand the importance of music just in like writing in general, like even writing a book. Like when I'm writing characters, when I'm writing events and places, a lot of that is inspired by music and like how, the way that music makes me feel, the way that like certain lyrics sound. And now I catch myself, now it's like hard for me to listen to music outside of the context of like a story. So that when I'm listening to music and I'm listening to a song, I'll like zone out and be like, yeah, that'd look great. Like, and then here's where the character comes in, and like, here's what he's doing. And then, yeah. But like music is a super important resource for me. And it's like, because I'm always listening to music constantly. And like sometimes I feel like weird. Like sometimes I feel like out of place if I don't have music playing or whatever, but like, music is like such an important resource because like I think art inspires art all the time, constantly, and it's like every artist has been inspired to do art by some other art form or some other place, some other time, by some other person. I think that's the awesome thing is that I think when I think about the being creative and like making something, whether that be like whatever your process is, I think that it's like a feeding loop of like people passing ideas and passing feelings and emotions to each other. So like someone will make a story and a character in the story will inspire a song, and that song will inspire a movie, will inspire a poem, and then so on and so forth, where it's like, it's like artists that are constantly handing things to each other, and like music has handed me so much. Where like I like being able to break down like sequences and scenes and like things in my head, like having the ability to just like see stories play out in front of me is all inspired by music, I think.
Did you have a music background, like anything like high school or anything? Like, did you play an instrument, or was it really just all through kind of audio recognition of just listening?
For me, it was all through audio recognition. I tried. So in must have been fourth grade, when I was living in Slovenia, we had like a band. We had basically they had their own band thing, and I was like, "Oh, I'm going to learn how to play an instrument, and I'm going to really do it." And I think I did like 2 days worth of like band stuff, and then I was like, "Man, there are a lot of buttons on this trumpet. Though. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this." And they were like, "Yeah, well, if you could really get to the instrument, you could join like marching band and everything." And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" They're like, "Oh, well, you have to go out and you have to practice for like weeks on end, and you have to go do that." And I was like, "I don't do that, dude. I'm out of here." Then I was like, and then I sort of dropped away from that. I've been gearing up to get back, and like I need to learn an instrument. But do anything, I'm learning the drums.
Yeah,
and I've already resigned myself to that, as that I'm learning the drums. But yeah, it was all like audio recognition stuff. And I think because I've spent a lot of time going through music and imagining myself in a musical space, that like that what inspired me to actually like, all right, let me figure out what like music is about. Like, what is actually like what is going on here. So I think that like anything like, I think if I had to pick a role, like say like if we were like, oh, you have to start a band tomorrow, what are you doing? I think the thing that calls to me the most is like doing anything like with like vocals, like being a vocalist in anything. And because like I think like the lyrics and the messaging and like the tone of somebody's voice and their cadence and everything, that's what makes a song for me. Like even like I've seen like, because I'm really big in like rap and everything. Like even seeing like somebody will pick like a suspect beat or like have like some suspect lyrics, but if their voice and their cadence is good enough, then it's like, all right, never mind. I'm on board. I'm on board. Sure.
I got you. If you had to rank your top 5 genres, like that you listen to on the day-to-day.
Okay. Top 5 genres. Number 1, and funnily enough, I think I'm going to like classic punk rock. So like 70s, like bands like The Descendants, the Ramones, Dead Kennedys, everything. I found those bands at such a pivotal moment in my life, because like that was when I fully gained like sentience in a way of like, oh, I can believe in things. Like I can have opinions that are about like politics and stuff like that, Yeah. And then that shaped a lot of like how I see music and how I see the world, and how people can be creative in a way of like, a lot of old punk bands were really just like it was a bunch of dudes in like a garage somewhere, and none of them know how to play instruments, and nobody knows what the hell's going on. They're like, you know what? Let me just thrash around and see what happens. And then they made the most transformative music genre ever. And it was awesome. And then I think number 2, I'll probably go rap. There are a little rap history lesson.
Yeah.
2016 was a super important year for rap, because I don't know if you remember like the phrase like mumble rap or whatever.
Yeah.
So 2016 was when a bunch of artists, there were like a lot of like young dudes, mainly from like Florida, like Florida, Texas, from like southern area, where they like, because I think like before that, like rap had a formula almost. So like obviously there was a bunch of standout artists that were huge, you had like Drake and Kendrick Lamar and everything. They were arguably in their prime, in their heyday, like before that time, but rap had a really big formula, and it was like beginning to like almost phase out, right? And it's like still was like behind pop music and country music and everything, like as far as like chartings and ratings go. And it's like, and it was hard for rappers to be taken seriously in the genre of making music, right? And then 2016 comes, and you have like these really young artists that are like pushing the boundaries of like what rap can really sound like. And there are artists like Little Peep, and then like Little Peep and Juice World, and Trippie Redd, and like there's a lot of like really young rappers that came out that they did what they wanted, they look how they wanted, they rapped about whatever, and they did it in a way that was so unique to the time that like people didn't understand like what was happening. And now those are some of the biggest rappers that are in the world right now, but at the time they felt so new, and they were like the like desperados of rap music, and they just do whatever they wanted, and that was really important because I think that taught me a lot of like individuality. And at a time where I was still trying to find my identity as like a music listener.
Yeah.
I think everyone has a musical identity. There are genres of music, there are artists that is like, if you could like define what you're into, what your music scene looks like, you'd like, oh yeah, these are my guys. And at a time where like, when you're younger, you don't really have that. You just have like, oh, I'm just listening to whatever happens to be on at the time. And then if I catch a song I really like, then I'll stick with it for a while until something else comes. So you're just kind of drifting from point to point. But like having oh, this is the genre, this is what I like, this is what I love. That's really when I got into a lot of that. And then, but rap's been in my house since I was a baby. You know, like my dad, you know, like obviously he gets the class Tupac, Nas, Biggie, you know, like Outkast. I had, he still has like a pretty much like every Wu-Tang Clan CD that you can get your hands on, as my dad had, and now all of it's mine. So I'm going through a back catalog of some instant classics right now.
Oh, yeah. Do you have a CD player to actually bust it?
Yeah. So UGK, Underground Kansas, is like what I've pretty much been listening to on repeat. Pretty much, but yeah, I have not only do I have that, but I also have like a record player and everything. So like all the stuff he has on vinyl. Yeah, he was a big collector. He just had a bunch of things.
Hell yeah, I got a record player right there.
Yeah, I see it.
Don't have a single record yet.
Hey, you know what? That's kind of the space that I'm in right now. Is I have I have his record player. I don't have any of his records.
Yeah.
So it's just sort of like a decoration for now, but it's nice. Yeah. It's just a nice item to have.
Right.
It's just nice.
It feels classic.
It feels, yeah. And I don't know anything about home design, like interior design. I don't know anything about that. But my mantra was, I was like, if you want to make a space feel like a home, just throw like a random record player. You get like a counter and a record player, and it's like, yeah, somebody really does live here.
That's the metric of success. I like that.
I'm like, this guy has a record player. I'm like, all right, well, he's not doing too bad.
All right, number 3, what you got?
I'm gonna go number 3. I'm probably gonna go house music. So, and this is one that I've grown to really love. House music wouldn't call it a part of my upbringing per se, of like the music that I was listening to when I was like coming up, but I was really big into like electronic music. And I think house music had the perfect balance between like the pop songs that I really enjoyed and like the new like electronic feel of like some of the newer music that I was hearing. And having gone to like a bunch of like raves and like everything, like the electronic, like the EDM music scene is one that has always fascinated me. It was always it's a culture that I just like wasn't ever really a part of until like I was like, because like not all EDM music is for me, right? And it's like some of it, like, you know, like I had a dubstep phase when I was a kid, but like other than that, I was like, it's not, I don't really get it. And then the house music was the perfect genre because I think house music is so moldable, right? Where you could do, I think house music, you can turn that into anything, right? If you wanted to, I said, if you take a house song, throw in some 808s, and like then you have a rap song, or like if you want to throw in like certain instruments, like you could do like reggaeton or like Afrobeat, or house music is so malleable to where like it's like the foundation that holds so many different music genres together. And so many artists now, in like most pop stars make house music, you know, and it's like, you know, like pop music is still its own thing, but like pop has always been like an amalgamous thing. Yeah. It's just like it's like a super genre that encompasses like 100 different music genres. Yeah, it encompasses
literally everything. It's basically just like what's popular right now.
Pretty much.
I never really I don't know. It was just tough to say that I like pop.
Yeah.
Because it's literally just saying that you like what's mainstream.
I like saying I like pop music is just like I listen to whatever's on the radio.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Like whatever sound comes out of the box I'm into. but house music is in as far as like DJing goes. I've always been so enamored with like the DJ life and everything, and like house music DJs are always like the coolest people ever. I've met so many DJs, and it's like yeah, after this, I'm gonna go and like do a set in Greece or something. Like I don't know. It's like yeah, you meet some you meet some random dude in like a warehouse in St. Louis at 3 a.m, and he's the coolest guy ever. By the way, he's awesome. Number 4. We were just on a tangent about pop music, but I will say, I'm saying number 4 as in like the older like 70s pop music. So things like I think it's like Tears Over Fear, things like blanking on names, but I'm like so like the older 70s pop music, I think, like Hall & Oates,
yeah.
this stuff like that, like because I think they had a formula. Yeah, I think all pop music has the formula, but back then there was something different about it that there were so many. I think they had so many, and maybe just because I'm young and I just wasn't around when that music was there, but I felt like they had so many breakout stars make like wonderful pieces of music that were like super soulful, and it's like it's hard to quantify whether or not an artist believes what they're actually singing. You know what I mean? It's like a pop song. Like some pops do feel like you could tell like they probably didn't write this or like they did, like they weren't trying that hard. It kind of feels like very commercial.
Yeah, like I view it as like a cookie cutter. Like you have all the parts that need to make a top 100 song.
Yeah,
but it's very like generic.
Yeah,
almost like you wrote in a prompt to AI and it just spits something out and you're just like, got it.
Yeah, a lot of AI generated as songs coming out. But like back in the day, I don't know, man. You know, I believe them. Like, you know, you have like a dude, he's singing about a girl, and it's like, I know your heart is really hurt. I know you feel it. And that probably, I'd say like, cause especially now, cause a lot of what I've been doing is going back. Cause I think that like, there's a lot of music that I missed that I'm like, let me do my due diligence. I'm a big advocate of like, there's a ministry when it comes to art, in the sense of like art's history is always important. And I think that like going back and seeing what the popular look like for a time before you is always so interesting, and it's so cool. Like, you know, like I'm never going to bash the music of now, because I think that we just have access to so many different resources that people didn't, that like music now is so crazy when you compare it to music back then, because it's like now you could literally do anything. You could do it from anywhere. You needed to have like a record label and like everything, or like if you were like a small artist, you would like you'd make a song and you'd put it on a CD and you'd go to a populated place and hope that everybody was kind enough to hear your music. Yep. Or you hope that your CD landed in the right hands.
Oh, but yeah, for sure.
Now it's like, dude, if you want to, I can make a song. I need my iPhone and the iPhone headphones that come with my iPhone, and I can make music, and that's all you need.
That is a really interesting part. I think that we're kind of lost on using music instruments right now. We're truly in a phase where the computer can make so many sounds and make it so unique that people are like, I don't need
why do I need to learn how to play guitar? Why do I need to hire a percussionist? I need to go to FL Studio and I need to just download a preset and then just find the sound that like I like.
Exactly.
And that has to be super scary for like if you're like a live musician. That has to be horrifying.
Well, that's like Ed Sheeran. One of the reasons why he's the most paid musician in the world is because he writes his own songs and then he performs by himself. Yeah, it's literally just him on a stage by himself with a guitar, and he does everything with his feet. He'll like turn on like whatever and mix the music and everything else with his feet while doing these massive concerts.
So impressive.
Like it's so cool. It's crazy.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, and it's like having a dude who's like, yeah, I could pay him and just get on stage and he'll do everything. Because like, I mean, obviously there has to be like some kind of production team, like lighting and everything, but it's like having like a lot of the onus be on like the artists themselves has to be like a really has to not only be a reassuring feeling for venues, but probably like when he was starting up, probably a scary one because like I don't know if we can put all our eggs in this like in this like red haired kid's basket right now.
I love the story Jamie Foxx said where you remember that?
Yeah.
I love that one where
so
he's
good.
like, Jamie Foxx at the club and he invites Ed Sheeran, puts him up on stage,
like,
and then
what are you doing, man?
It's like, why'd you bring him? He was like, let's see what the kid can do. I was like, yes.
Let's see what the kid has. Yeah. It's so and it's so like I don't know, and I have such a respect for live performances. I'll rarely ever badmouth anyone who does live performance. That's so cool.
It's scary. Like it's such an interesting. The way that I view it is, I view a fear of like just presenting in a room full of people.
Yeah,
like that alone freaks people out.
It's tough.
And then that might be with people you know, and then you do that with people you don't know, and then the scale just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
And now you're doing it for like thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah.
And it's all just marketing yourself as like, hey, I'm the person to listen to right now. So
right.
Yeah. And then if you mess it up, everyone is there
just watching you.
Yeah. You know what just dawned on me? Probably should have asked you if it was cool if I started cussing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would let it rip this whole time, and it dawned on me. I was like, if he has to edit that out, I'm not going to be here for this process. I was like, let me stop giving him extra work if I don't have to.
No. We purposely put like 18 and up.
Awesome.
I like to have the freedom. I don't curse a ton.
Right.
But if I feel it in the mood, I let it fly.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have a sailor's mouth, so I just wanted to check. Yeah.
Number 5.
I'm going to go with, this is like a super niche thing. Well, not niche in the sense of like it wasn't a very popular music genre, but niche in the way of like, it's like a very specific. Everything kind of been a little more general. Nu metal. So bands specifically like Korn and Limp Bizkit and everything. So music influences aesthetics all the time. So like when you see like someone who identifies like goth or emo, all of that stems from music that begets a culture with it. And what nu metal did for like dudes who were like wanted to wear baggy ass jeans, white dudes who want to get cornrows, and everyone who's really into skateboarding, what that did for that community was major. And it did crazy things for me because because Black people have an interesting relationship with rock music. Okay, there's a historical side to it of like, well, like a lot of like the early artists that inspired what became modern rock were Black, and it's like the rhythms and cadence came from a lot of Black artists and everything. And it's like there's that, but also growing up Black, if you were listening to like fucking Marilyn Manson, you were weird. You're fucking weird. You know,
no Nickelback today, huh?
You know what I mean? We're like Jeezy just dropped a song. Turn whatever that is off. Let's go. But like, because I was like around a bunch of different people. Like I was like, you know, I grew up in like there was like a heavy like Hispanic community, and everything. So I have a love for all pop music that comes from like those regions of the world. Everything. I remember it was me, Mikey, and Trevor, which are my two, like, when I was in like second or third grade, these were like my guys. I die about these boys. And it was like Mikey's dad's garage, and we were playing Halo 2 on Xbox. It was like he had like in the garage, he had like a couch, and there was like so in the garage he had a couch, he had this like really old Persian rug and this like fat back TV with just like the original Xbox hooked up to it. Hours we would sit down there, and he'd come in the garage and he'd be like working on like his motorcycle or whatever. And he would just play like Korn and Limp Bizkit and like all those bands, and like, so like hearing that music, I associated that with just the feeling of being awesome. And there are certain things that I hold on to dearly from when I was a child. So now even I'm 22 years old, and to this day, I'm like, when I put on those bands, I'm like, yeah, I'm sick. I feel awesome.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And then just like the aesthetics that they inspired, because it spiraled into like my super duper, like it inspired like my love of wrestling. So like WWE, like the old WWE, ECW, like all those,
they definitely
like,
go hand in hand. Yeah, I see where that connection comes from
for sure. And it was like, dude, when I was a kid, I was convinced there's a wrestler named Rob Van Dam. I was convinced that I was Rob Van Dam, so much so that like I would have like I'd have like I would get into arguments in like at school, which was just me like cutting a wrestling promo on somebody, and then I would finish with being like yeah. Which I had to throw in a wrestling reference because like wrestling is super big for me right now. I'm
Right now?
super duper into wrestling. I was really into wrestling when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But like I fell out of love with wrestling because wrestling sucked for a while, and now wrestling's awesome again. So I'm back.
What are you watching it right now? Like, what's the
So WWE is like the default wrestling standard. I would say it's still the most popular wrestling genre.
Number one.
But I've gotten really deep into wrestling, so I'm always trying to find like different wrestling genres. So there's a couple promotions that I would say if you wanted to get into wrestling in a way that's like, well, I don't just want to watch WWE. Like, what does the world of wrestling have to offer? There is probably the biggest competitor to WWE is a company called AEW. They have. There are some like former WWE stars that are on AEW doing awesome. There's some like a bunch of new talent that's on AEW. It's the comparison. I think the AEW matches are faster. So like you watch a WWE match and you can tell that you're watching professionals go, but they're going through their spots and they're running through the things. And like, you know, matches are longer than they are back then. Like back then they'd give you like 5 minutes and you go in there, like you do a couple spots and then one of the guys has to, you lay down and you get pinned, brother. That's it. You're off the screen. But like now matches are 10, 15 minutes long. But I think WWE are a lot slower because I think like the physicality of it all has taken a little bit more of a back seat because they're worried about protecting talent, right? So back in the day, you had a lot of great stars that got their careers cut because like their spots are too dangerous and they're going too fast.
Yeah.
Right. And people aren't calling the right things. They're fumbling over their spots and now people are getting hurt, and so like now they were like, there was a real big initiative of like, slow it down. Hey, like you take a little longer to taunt, call out, like you take a little longer to understand where you're going, what your spots are, like what are you doing? But I think AEW is a lot faster. But I think because like their talent is a lot newer and younger, and it's like, so I would recommend like watching AEW just because I think it's as accessible as WWE, and I'm really into like a lot of smaller promotions. There is they might be based in like Philadelphia or something. I don't know if they have I don't know if they do like shows on the road. Yeah. But there's this promotion called GCW. It is, so ECW was like a very old, like the old wrestling promotion. It was like their whole thing was being extreme. So they do these things called death matches.
Okay.
It is gross. It's very entertaining to watch. It is gross. They get like light tubes and like hit each other with them, and then they like drop each other on barbed wire, and there's just blood everywhere all the time. And
Jesus Christ,
it's brutal. It's brutal. And that's another side of wrestling that like because like when you think about like wrestling, like you think about WWE, and it's like, okay, somebody might bleed every like couple months. Like somebody takes like a shot. It's like usually the bleeding's intentional. Yeah. Like back in the day, they used to have razor blades. Yeah. So like, like you fucking like the referee would hand you a blade, you take a hit and you'd go like, ah. Hey, okay. But like, and like the backyard underground wrestling scene, like they, you can't like you weren't in it to blade. Like somebody's gonna hit you over the head with a light tube, and blood was going to come from your face because they just hit you in the face with the light. They would drop like thumbtacks on the mat and then like slam somebody's back onto it, right? And it was like that was their way of wrestling, and that was like. And I think GCW takes like the really like nitty gritty, gross feel of like watching like a crazy backyard wrestling match, and takes it on a road to like, and then gives it off to some like really professionals, like a lot of like really cool professionals, and like some like newcomers who are like really well studied. Where it's like if you wanted to watch like the grittiest like down like what wrestling has to offer, but you weren't really in the mood to watch somebody die, watch GCW for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and it was like finding like the smaller wrestling promotions because I think wrestling is so cool. I think I've always thought it was awesome when I was a kid, but I think when you're a kid, watching wrestling is so cool because you want to believe in those stories so bad, right? Like when Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio had a match for the custody of a child, in my heart of hearts, when I was a kid, dude, the fate of this kid rests on whether or not Rey Mysterio can pull away this win or not. I was scared, dude. When Undertaker would come out, eyes rolled to the back of his head. As a kid, you're like, yeah, this guy's a monster. This guy's a freak. Like you were like, this guy's actually a zombie, and it's like, and I think that's part of a reason why I wanted to create stories in that way. I think the WWE was like a big influence for me, just because like it is storytelling. It's like, and you're watching performers tell stories with their bodies.
Yeah,
you know, like these flashy moves, these like high flying antics, it's like super like strongman feats. It's like all of it is like engineered towards storytelling. Everyone's like whatever angle they're working, like, you know, you have heroes and villains, you have tragic falls and everything. It is like collaborative storytelling with two professionals using their body and putting their body on the line to tell like a really great story. And that really resonated with me when I was a kid. And I think that like now that I'm older and I understand what's actually happening, I'm glad that like it took away the mystique of like, obviously like I know it's not real. Well, I know that like they don't like, oh, when these two guys are punching each other, they don't really hate each other. Like they're coworkers.
Yeah, like the outcome is set and it is a play that they're putting on. But like a lot of the hits are real, a lot of the drops are real, a lot of
they're going out there and they're when I say they're risking their bodies, I do not mean to undersell.
Yeah.
They are going at it. But like when you're a kid, they're like with like the feuds and the story of it, like I know that they're working a story, but I'm still interested in the story. And I still want to be sold a story.
Yeah.
And if the story is good enough, I will, in the moment, I'll be like, yeah, dude, this is real. Like they're really trying to kill each other out here, you know? And it's like, wrestling still hasn't lost that magic for me. But there was a point in time where like wrestling was not good. I want to say, I don't know, I might get heat for this, but I want to say probably like around the 2010s, like a lot of the 2010s wrestling was god awful. And mainly due to like a lot of like background decisions that were happening. You know, it's not any like the talent's fault. I don't think like I wouldn't pin it to like, oh, like this wrestler was really bad or whatever. Just because like, you know, you work with what you're given. Yeah. Right. It's like at the end of the day, like when the wrestlers go out the mat, like very rarely ever do they get to improv or do whatever they want. Like, you know, like when your boss comes out, it's like, hey, you're gonna go out there and do this stupid gimmick for like a year. You go out there, like if you want a job in that, if you want to be in that spot, you do it.
Exactly.
I think wrestling is really good to get into now because WWE has competition now.
Ooh, that's a good point. Competition does breed more excitement.
When there was like, you know, like, because back in the day, one of the most exciting moments of WWE was the Monday Night Wars, where they had to compete with ECW and WCW, and there were other promotions that were doing big. They had the big stars. They had a bunch of really cool people on there. So WWE, they had to try hard to keep your attention. That's how you got Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's how you got The Rock. That's how you got The Undertaker and Kane and all these like household names. They came about because the WWE had to try really hard to keep your attention. Because I was like, if they're just showing you whatever, dude, I'm gonna turn this off and I'm gonna go to WCW and I'm gonna go watch Hulk Hogan do his thing. Yeah. Right. You know, like I'm gonna turn this off because Rob Van Dam is about to defend the hardcore title in ECW. Like I'm not watching this, right? So it's like they had to try really hard. And I think for a while WWE didn't have any competition. WCW went bankrupt, ECW went bankrupt, and WWE consumed those properties. Yeah, right. They bought out WCW. They bought out you know. So for a while they didn't have any competition, so they could show you whatever they wanted. You know what I mean? There was a while they were giving out tickets for free. Ooh. And people still weren't coming to shows. Damn. And they couldn't fill the arenas. You know? Yeah,
I was never big into wrestling. For me, it was about 2003 was my time frame where I did watch a little bit. Yeah. And that was The Rock, pretty young. That was Stone Cold Steve Austin, Undertaker, Rey Mysterio. Like a lot of the classics were from that time frame. For sure. That was WWE, Raw, WWF, like that was that time frame. But my mom didn't let me watch it. So like what I would do is she would leave to work early in the morning. I would run to the TV that was in the living room and I would put it on. But right after that was Charmed. And that's what I was really watching. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wrestling was just the thing I had to watch beforehand, but Charmed was the thing that had my attention.
Yeah, you know what? I can't even fault you for that. Charmed? Yeah. Nah, I mean, because who wants to watch that? Look, the Stone Cold Steve Austin was cool, I guess, but
yeah. But they were fine and Charmed.
Yeah, some real media's coming on right after this, Vince McMahon. So if you could hurry up, man.
So that was the mindset. Yeah, I had my Heelys. I would swing by and throw my thing on. Hell yeah,
it's so good. I think people really understand how important cultural impact the Heelys had on everyone's lives.
Heelys were life for a while there.
Cause, dude, I was like, I remember being really hyped to get a pair of Heelys, and I remember I was like, dude, like these are like this is a passed down tradition. Yeah. I don't even know when Heelys were like invented. Like I don't know when like the Heelys really hit the market, but it felt like
it was like mid 2000s, I think.
I think so, yeah. Because I remember being a kid, and I was like, obviously I was too young to have Heelys falling on my head 24/7, but I know my sisters had Heelys, and everybody was like, it was so cool.
Hell yeah, I remember. Yeah, man, I would have Heelys. My mom couldn't afford Heelys, so she got me like this like knockoff version, and it was like you had to like undo it and put it in yourself, and it had this terrible rubber stopper, and it was the worst. But she was like, "Good," and I was like, "Yes."
You know what?
Not really, but
you know what? Sure, man. Yeah,
I see the effort that you put into these knockoffs. So.
You know, speaking of around the time Heelys, like scooters were like a super big thing, like the Razor scooters.
Oh yeah, Razor scooters are
dude. We were children, so I can admit this without any legal repercussions. But we used to, dude. My sisters were awful. They used to steal Razor scooters so much. I remember going in the garage and there'd be like 15 Razor scooters. It was all the neighbor kids, and it got to the point where they took the Razor scooters and then started like renting them out back to the people who they took the Razor scooters from. They would like be like, "Oh yeah, you could ride this for today. Should make sure you bring this back." And it's like, dude, that was his scooter. and what was it? The Rip. They were like, it's like a skateboard, but it was like like the Rip board or whatever they were called.
Ripstick.
Ripstick, yes.
The Ripstick, yep.
Yeah.
Same thing. I had the Wave. Is the one that I had. Yeah.
The Wave is so funny.
It was the Ripstick for fat kids. So it was a little bigger, a little thicker. It was a lot harder to move, and I was like, I'm over here like my stomach is moving up and down.
The Wave is so good.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the Wave is awesome. By the way, that rocks. Yeah,
that was the product at the time. Held competition.
You know what? I think there was no better time to be a bootlegger than back in the day. I feel like.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I just feel like there are bootlegs today, but I feel like there's no love in it. Like there's no that bootleggers don't respect their craft anymore. You know, like I feel like bootleggers used to have fun.
I certainly see that. Bootleggers used to have fun is hilarious. That's such a crazy.
Dude, they
used to have fun with it.
They did. There was so much passion in the game.
You know why? It's because now it's Wish and Temu.
Yeah,
and it's that they found a way to win anyways, which is crazy.
It was like, dude, they put the bootleggers to work, brother. This is crazy. Back then, they used to do it just for the love of the game.
Just for the love of the game. They were like these knockoffs. It used to be like it's still kind of like that. But you go to New York. And there's like the alleys that you just why?
Yeah, I said we don't got no G.I. Joe man, but here's this Action Dude,
Action Joe.
Get you some Action Joe, man. It used to be fun.
I love it. I like to ask people as one of the last questions is if you had a piece of advice or something for anyone, shout it out.
Piece of advice. One thing that always helped me. I think when circling back to the creative process, when you're creating or making anything, the natural thing that because people are inspired right? When you see a movie or hear a song or hear a story, you see somebody tell a good ass joke, you want to be like, okay, yeah, like, I want to be part of a creative process. I want to get involved. But I think when you start from that basis, it's perfectly fine. And most people operate off this. But I think you trap yourself in a system of comparison where like, oh, well, I don't have the budget. I don't have the whatever. I don't have the means to get this done. I think the people forget the most important thing about creating is the creating process itself. I don't want people to ever be afraid to go out and make something, because I think making things is good for the soul. I think in your everyday day-to-day life, moving through whatever job you work, whatever situation you're in, things can still feel super like monotonous and like samey all the time. And an environment like that will kill your creative process if you let it. I think no matter if you could work in construction, you can work in, like a blue collar job, you work like an office space, like whatever your job is, however you get yourself from point A to point B, I would recommend carve out an hour, 2 hours, or whatever time, even like 10, 15 minutes. If you can find some time in your day to make something, write a story, write a poem, you told a really funny joke at work, go write it down. Make it into a bit. Make it into a segment. If you have some time on the weekends, go to improv class. Go take go sign up with like an actors guild somewhere. Go find like a slam poet. Anything that you can do to make something. The process of making something is it's you communicating with yourself and you communicating with everyone else through a medium that you all agree to share together. And that connection is so difficult to find outside of art. Right? You can go to a bar and meet some new people and connect with them that way. But I think in an age we live in where communication is horrifying to people and people are so bad at it, art is the perfect way to communicate. I've met all of my lifelong friends, people that I consider like family, like brothers and sisters to me, all through the process of sharing art. All the people that I play D&D with, they're the closest people to me. I play with my loved ones, people that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I share the medium of creativity through them, and it's become a love language of mine. You'll never know what you can find until you start making things. Go make stuff, whatever you want, and make anything and everything. And if you don't think you can make it anyways.
I love it. All right, Arri, thank you so much for coming by. I appreciate it.
Me.
You want to throw social media or anything out? Like, do you want people reaching out to you, or I don't know? Do you want them to follow you for anything?
Yeah. If you are a wrestling fan, anything WWE, anything wrestling related, I have a Twitter page that I share and write and do everything wrestling related. So you can find that at Ruka World, RUCA World. Find that on Twitter or X, as you will. Any place that's not wrestling related, you can find me. My handle will be Transire. TRAN. Usually double S. IRE. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Arri, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.